News Radio 1290, WNBF, Binghamton Now. I'm Bob Joseph. On a Monday morning, we welcome to the broadcast Rebecca Lisoski, a Binghamton University student. Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, thanks for coming in. Appreciate your being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And you say this is the first time you've been interviewed live on the radio?
Yes, first time.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And the topic is important, and it's important not just to Binghamton University students, but it's important for people here in the Binghamton area because we love our community, and we want the community to be a welcoming place for everyone, including the thousands of students, especially the growing number of students who live downtown. It's amazing how many students now are residing downtown compared to, say, just 5 years ago. The number is astonishing, and you are among the students. You live in downtown Binghamton.
Yes.
And generally, how has it been? How many years have you now been in downtown Binghamton during your time at BU?
So I've lived in downtown Binghamton for 2 years now, but I've been coming downtown for 4 years now since I've started at Binghamton.
All right. And generally, what have your experiences been over the 4 years or so?
Generally, they've been good. Generally, no problems.
And yet, 4 weeks ago, all that changed.
Right.
Well, tell us. We've reported a bit about what happened. I believe, was it January
31st?
31st, right at the end of January. So, indeed, just over 4 weeks ago. So, tell us what happened.
Sure. I was walking home with two other of my friends, and right as we were right in front of my house, a car pulled up, and three individuals came out at us and began to attack us. We didn't provoke anything. We had only walked about 2 blocks. We walked past the police station, just right on Holly. It was a very well-lit walk. It wasn't a walk that a lot of people said, oh, we're there in a seedy neighborhood. We walked in groups. We were all 21 years old. We were trying to be as responsible as we could, and yet still, these people, they just wanted to hurt us. They didn't want to take our stuff. They just came out and attacked us.
And this was, I believe, right around 3 o'clock, maybe a little bit after 3 a.m.
Yeah, right after closing time.
Now, typically, if you after the bars are closing on State Street, they're depending on what time of year it is and weather and a few other conditions, there could be a lot of people looking to get out of the downtown area and either get to their places there where they live, either downtown or on campus. How does it usually go? Tell me what the usual experience typically is for students at the end of, say, when closing happens, either early Saturday or Sunday morning. What's the situation? Are there sufficient number of cabs?
Usually around that time, it's a little scarce with cabs. There's a lot of people that come out all at once a lot of times. So I would recommend to students to leave earlier for sure, because at that time, everyone exits the bars onto State Street, and there are barricades so people can wait around while the cabs are taking other people. But it's a little tough to get cabs at times because there are so many people trying to get to their destinations.
And at that point, there are police in that area, that stretch of State Street. There
Right.
is a police presence to
Right.
keep an eye on things, and generally, not always, but most of the time, I would say probably 98% of the time, there are no real problems in that immediate area, as far as I know.
Right, yeah. Police are always on foot on State Street. Beyond that, we didn't see any, but on State Street itself, there are police there.
So, and on January 31st, the night that this confrontation occurred with you and your two friends, had you given a thought to looking for a cab, or since you're only a short walk, I'm guessing the walk is probably 5 minutes or maybe a little bit longer than 5 minutes to where you live, did you just think, well, it should be relatively safe, or what was the situation on that particular morning?
So usually when we try and get cabs, it can be a problem because we are only 2 blocks away. A lot of times they'd rather take people who are at further distances and who are in larger groups so that they can make more money. For that particular night, we didn't attempt to take a cab because we were in a group, so we felt safe. So we just attempted to walk straight home.
Did anybody have a weapon? I mean, when you walk This is just me asking because I don't live downtown right now, but I work here. I'm here. I spend, it seems like, more than half my life downtown, whether I'm working or sometimes going out to dinner or whatever. Frequently it's downtown. My experience, and it's not usually, say, after midnight, but sometimes, my experience is usually it's not a problem, but also I've been told of not just students but other people who've been attacked, and sometimes I've been advised that you better carry something, whether it's, a knife, a gun, or something that you could spray at an attacker. Did anybody have anything that you could use to ward off a person who confronted you?
None of us actually had anything. I have pepper spray myself. At the time, I don't think I could have gotten it out in time. I didn't have it on me, though. I had it just in my house a few steps away, but I always wonder if I would have been able to get it out in time, because they did exit the vehicle very quickly. So I'm not sure if necessarily having the weapon would have helped us, or it could have potentially hurt our situation if we tried to pull a weapon and they had another one.
And that's what I've also been told too. I mean, when you're being confronted or attacked, the culprit has the advantage, because otherwise you're being surprised. This is not something that you ever anticipated.
Right, yeah. Never in my life would I thought that it would have happened right on my front porch.
So you were with the two other students, and tell us basically what transpired. I'm sure this all happened within probably a few seconds time, or how long did the confrontation last?
It might have been a few minutes. Honestly, at this point, it's very blurry. But what happened was, when we were walking on the sidewalk, they pulled their car up, and they yelled something out at us, "Hey," or I'm not sure exactly, and they all exited the vehicle. They pushed my one friend to the ground, and she was able to run away and call the police. Our guy friend was able to hold up the guy that was trying to push us, and once my friend ran away, the two girls jumped on me. They were pulling my hair out, ripping chunks of it out, which the police scooped up and threw in an envelope. They were pulling me by my hair, and they ripped open my jeans, and for 2 weeks I had to wear a neck brace and a knee brace. Yeah, it was a little bit traumatic, but I was able to, within, I don't know how long it was, whether it was a few minutes or a minute, if that, I was able to escape and was okay.
It's just scary to hear you tell about it. You're telling more details. I mean, from what my knowledge of it was very limited, and thinking about any confrontation, whether it's at 3 a.m. or 3 p.m, and believe me, I've seen confrontations here in our area, even in the middle of the day, because they do happen on occasion. It's just frightening to think about, and not knowing how it was going to end. Definitely,
yeah, it was very scary.
Tell me about the police response.
The police responded very, very fast, actually. My friends had heard my screams from outside, because it was right outside of my house. So I woke them all up, and so they called the police immediately. And the police, although they did have a lot of calls, they did come fairly fast, which was good.
And in terms of the questions as they prepared their reports, what was your assessment of the questions you were asked, and whether they thought there was much chance? Because this, in my view, this is something unusual, that the people involved in the confrontation were two women and a man. It was not say 2 or 3 men.
Right.
There were a couple of women involved. Did they suggest that there was much hope of finding these people quickly?
They sent out a car right after, but by the end of my statement, they said that the chances of finding them were very slim. They said that the technology on the surveillance cameras in the area, although is enough to identify the type of vehicle, it wouldn't help with IDing the plates, which would really catch them. So it's been 4 weeks now, and there's been nothing else, no other leads. My family put out money for a reward, but as time goes on, it's becoming more bleak that they'll actually find them.
And the amount of money was actually increased. I believe the total reward now, with money offered by your family members, along with some money that was put up to match part of that with the Binghamton Police, is now, I believe, $2,000.
Wow, which is incredible. And it is a little sad. They did throw out a news article about it, and people, commented about privilege and all of that, and I think it's sad because the city would have responded that way with anyone, not just students.
Well, what did you make of some of those comments? And in this day and age, of course, anybody, anywhere can comment, and,
right.
and it could actually have been people who live in Binghamton. It could have been people living outside Binghamton who saw the story on the website. But you have to probably assume that most of the comments that were made were from local people. What did you take away from some of the comments that you read?
I definitely learned to stop reading them. A lot of them seemed good intentioned, but that they didn't fully know the story that went on. Some of them said that we provoked them, and things that obviously people wouldn't say if they were in person or if they actually knew what went on. So I hope that this story will clarify a little bit of what happened. Well,
and I think that's important. That's why I'm glad that you came on to talk about the real situation that occurred, because in the news coverage, and most news stories don't go into much detail. Sometimes an incident, no matter how terrifying it is, gets reported and summed up in one or two sentences.
Right.
And certainly the people who experienced it must think, well, that doesn't do it justice. That doesn't come anywhere close to convey what we were dealing with or what we felt could happen.
Right.
As you mentioned, with now about a month having gone by, and to the best of our knowledge, we've heard no indication that the police are close to making an arrest. It must be very disappointing for you and your friends that maybe this case won't be closed.
Definitely. It's disappointing, but I tend to try and find positive in anything. I've been trying to use what happened to propel forward some sort of change with safety. And I know that the kind of people that do a random act of violence like this, I'm sure it's not uncommon for them to do it again. So hopefully our information will help them lead to a different arrest in another case.
Speaking with Rebecca Lisoski, Binghamton University student who was part of a group of students who was confronted, and Becca was assaulted just about a month ago. How are you doing now, by the way? You mentioned that you were wearing a neck brace for a time.
Much better. Everything is pretty much totally back to normal, which is great.
What did your parents think when they found out what happened?
Oh, I have a lease signed for next year as I'm continuing my MBA here, and they told me, "Are you sure you want to come back? Are you sure you're okay?" And I assured them that I love Binghamton and that I need to stay here, and that I would make it my next propelling battle to kind of do some sort of change around here that would help ease my parents' mind and ease my friends.
Did you give any consideration after this happened to saying, I don't want to be back here, because if I go to that area again, I may just have to relive what happened that night? Was that something that at least crossed your mind even for a moment?
Maybe for a moment, but then I've been able to meet with the mayor. I've been able to meet with dozens of people around the city, which definitely gave me a better outlook on the next year that I'll be here.
And I take it from, as you're discussing this, that you don't view what happened 4 weeks ago as a reflection on the overall Binghamton community, that it's just because these three people who still are at large confronted you and your friends. That's not something that is an indicator of who the people of Binghamton really are.
Right.
Let's talk about efforts to make things safer, and you have indicated that is your mission and your hope, that going forward that downtown Binghamton can become still a welcoming place for students, but also a place where safety can be ensured as much as possible.
Right. I found difficulty at first. I was getting a lot of no's out of people who were in charge of budgets and people out of the university. It's a very hard topic because it is Binghamton. It's Binghamton Police responsibility, but it's the school who is sponsoring students to come into the area. So it's kind of feels like a hot potato situation where it's, who's going to deal with this situation next. And after meeting with the mayor, he reassured me about the efforts that he's trying to make. And I read up a lot about him before, and I knew about his public safety platform, and he discussed with me a lot of the transparency that goes on in his department, how they have body cameras on all the police officers now, how he's thinking about doing possibly a safety corridor where the police will be lining the street in some areas during certain times so that students can see their presence more when they're walking home. I think police presence is huge. Just simply having a police car in the area, just sitting there, I think stops crime. And I found that the school could be a bit abrasive at times, but when I met with the student association, that's when I think I got the most traction, and I think that's where I'm gonna be the most useful. They have a lot of great ideas that they discuss with me, so I'm really excited to work with them.
Well, recently when the Binghamton University president Harvey Stenger was here on the program, we did talk about this incident, and he says he's very concerned, obviously, about student safety, and so he's obviously hoping. Let's face it, from a school administration standpoint, this is not the type of news, especially when perhaps future potential students and their parents are making some decisions. You don't need anything that reflects negatively on the safety of students. And definitely our general assumption, and maybe we're at fault in the media, and maybe we're at fault for since we're not out, say, on State Street that much. I concede I'm not out on State Street that much at 2:30 or 3 o'clock on a Saturday or Sunday morning. It's been a little while, and so we may have a false assumption that it's safer than maybe it really is.
Definitely. When you're living in the bubble of the university, and then you have taxis drive you straight downtown right into where the police have it barricaded, it does give you this sense of comfort. And once you step right outside of it, you realize, this is a real city. This is also a city that was, ranked pretty high in New York crime rates. So it really is something that people need to be aware of.
And I think part of it, because I recall when I was at your age, you have that sense of being invulnerable and invincible, that although you read sometimes about crimes happening in the downtown area, that you don't think you're likely to be touched. And as you said, especially walking in a group of 3 people, you would think that that ought to be sufficient to be able to walk a couple blocks downtown without being accosted.
Right.
As far as providing safer rides, do you have a sense of how any safe ride program potentially could work to help better serve Binghamton University students?
So when I met with the SA, they had a lot of great ideas. They had one of their biggest ideas was, which they're pitching to the university president and to all the people that they need to, was the idea of using a third-party app that would connect students to both a bus service but also straight to the police. So students could send information straight to the police, which would increase communication. I think that's a big thing, would be that. But when it comes to the Safe Ride program, that's a little bit tough because the taxi services and all the legalities with that. So we've been really trying to find out what the best way to really have that happen is. I met with representatives from an app called Wheelie, which is a carpooling app, and they wanted to know if we thought it would be a good idea to work with them to have it be used as a platform for getting students home safely. And at this point, we're kind of, I'm trying to myself at least weigh, what the best options are and what I can actually do.
Would Uber having service in the Binghamton area, could that be helpful in cases like this? I know obviously there are legislative issues that have to be addressed in Albany before Uber can provide any service upstate, but Uber definitely is trying to get into this market in other upstate cities. Do students have a sense that that service could potentially help?
Right, definitely, I would say. I've seen petitions online, and I can totally see how it definitely needs to go through Albany. But I would say that students are comfortable with Uber because a lot of them are familiar with it, living downstate, and comfort comes with safety. They go hand in hand, and I feel like students would be willing to use Uber very quickly. But we'll see if that would ever be a possibility.
And of course, in fairness, there's no system that's 100% safe, as we saw with the situation with an Uber driver who's accused. Yeah, and so there's no system that will assure safety under all circumstances.
Right.
But theoretically, there might be more accountability. One thing, after I spoke with you, and because it's been a concern about cab service and whether drivers are, as you say, in some cases, ignoring students who want just a short ride from State Street after the bars close, and because they have a financial incentive to take bigger groups of students back to campus. It is clear because Broome County regulates the taxis. And according to Broome County's Director of Security, James D'Adamio, who I expect will be on this program soon to talk about taxi regulation and what drivers, what their responsibilities are, and also passenger responsibilities, he told me emphatically they are not allowed to refuse a ride. And one thing that he also did say, that it's important for the county to receive feedback or complaints when drivers or companies don't provide the service that they are supposed to do. If they have a license to serve Broome County, they have to follow certain rules. But he also said that it's important for people to try to get the information when that happens, say a driver license number or the company or something, so they have something to work with, and then also to report it promptly. So just and I think that information might be useful for students to ensure that the cab service that's here is dependable and reliable, whether you want to go to Hawley Street or whether you want to go back to campus or to Johnson City, that the ride that you need is going to be available. Now, one listener suggests, what about the possibility of closing the bars earlier? Because right now we have a 3 o'clock closing. Do you think that could make any difference?
I think that in terms of my sleep schedule, it would be amazing. I know a lot of people I live with always wonder why even other SUNYs such as Oneonta, they close much earlier. And
Ithaca's earlier.
Right. A lot of cities are much earlier. I do think that as much as that would be great for keeping people off the streets at later hours. What occurred to me, I think could have happened at any hour.
So even if the bars closed at 1 o'clock, this could have happened at 1:15.
Yeah, I had a previous student, a girl who transferred, who was attacked 2 years ago. She told me her story after hearing, because she was heartbroken. And her incident happened around 11:45, I believe. So even if the bars were to close at 12, a random act of violence can happen at any time in any city.
Rebecca Lisoski, I appreciate your joining us today. Actually, I'll invite you to come back maybe in a month or two to give us a sense, an update of how this effort is going, because, again, it's not only important to students, but it's important to the people who live and work in Binghamton.
Thank you very much for having me.